This is a reading from Time's Reservoir, the first anthology of the Quabbin Quills.
10 Days at Spandau Prison by Dennis F. King. I woke up one day and decided it was time to man up and do something good with my life, so I joined the U.S. Army. I knew a war was raging in Vietnam, but other guys my age were over there serving our country. The fear of dying faces us as we get closer to danger. I was not thinking of bad things, but thought of seeing the world and doing my duty to the country I live in. My luck was with me because I was sent to the Berlin Wall in Germany, then a hot spot in the Cold War. The world is always a place of battles here today, gone somewhere else tomorrow, it seems. We were considered to be city soldiers being stationed there. Our training concentrated on taking possession of city buildings and fighting an aggressor at that time, the Soviet Union. One day, we were all ordered to fall out for a morning formation where a roll call is made. Each unit leader reports those present for duty and any on sick call. The true unit strength is determined that way every day. Today there seemed to be some private talking going on with the platoon leaders, all leaning into the huddle, and then an announcement was made. There is a saying in the Army to never volunteer for anything. It is a warning, but I am not very smart at times, and like a gamble. I had joined the Army, unlike most soldiers who were drafted into the service reluctantly. We all served together, but guys like me, a volunteer, were told to never complain because you asked for it. The top non-commissioned officer spoke to us in a serious tone. I need 18 volunteers for a special assignment. Step forward if willing to help me out. I moved right up to the front and was directed to join the newly formed group to his side. He called out the names of 3 sergeants at random to join us. He then announced that we were going away for 10 days and 10 nights on a very important mission. There would be plenty of marching and close sleeping quarters, no other duty but to be there and only there. The best part was that when we returned after this trip, there would be 3 days leave given to each of us if we did not screw up as a unit or each individual. We were all happy and let out a yell, but then he gave us the bad news. He said that we would be confined to one building day and night unless on guard duty, and would be no drinking of alcohol permitted either. And he said, and no chasing hairy-legged Frauleins around at night. The rest of our company laughed at us, now knowing we were looking at a weird trip ahead, but it was something different to do. I like change. The top officer stepped forward to speak to his company, and we were ordered at ease, which means to relax in place and now listen without interruption. We all listened carefully to his words because leaders speak once and do not repeat themselves. Then he turned towards us in this group of troops and spoke directly to us in a lower than normal voice. You will be serving at the Spandau Prison, where inside the walls is the last Nazi prisoner named Rudolf Hess, Hitler's sidekick from the start of the Nazis. You all know we conquered them, and he is now the last man being held there. You will stay there, march as if you were in a parade in front of me. Our next officer continued the briefing by saying, prisoner number 7 is not allowed to be spoken to. No televisions or radio for him. All part of his punishment of isolation. Conversation ended with him saying that we were now going to be part of history. You will guard a World War II prisoner during 2 other wars going on elsewhere. Lastly, he said, serve us well, stay awake, and remember your orders are, shoot to kill if anyone approaches the prison walls. My new group was ordered to gather up our few toiletries, clean underwear, and we were to be wearing our summer uniforms, tan khakis. I was allowed 1 book to read. I took my copy of Great Western Philosophers by Bertrand Russell. Looks like I will have plenty of book time and nothing else. Our trucks will be leaving in an hour, so we hustled to be ready. At the appointed hour, we climbed into our 2.5-ton trucks, drove across the city to the British sector in the Spandau district. We have arrived at the prison, ready for the unknown, and this man behind the walls of brick. The man inside the uniform becomes different in many ways once you put it on. The feeling of power is conveyed with the weight of medals, insignias, and other accoutrements. There is a pride being allowed to wear it and to represent those that provided it for the willing. You are the thoughts, hopes, and the protector of your side in the battles of war. When you take it off and hang it up, there is a transformation that takes place. Now the person is naked to the world until you put on your other garments. Your impression of others will be totally different now, and the playing field becomes equal. I have worn both outfits and know this firsthand. I felt that way every day as I dressed for duty in the Army to face the world. The public citizens just watched us pass by, looking at our faces as our vehicles rumbled down their cobblestone streets. We all sit erect, rifles standing in front of us, a show of force, looking like dogs with a low growl in our appearance. Our truck stopped in front of an old red brick barracks. We moved in, carrying our duffel bags and rifles. The one big room has high ceilings and tall windows like a chapel, but it never was one. The room was divided into 4 areas with 6 bunk beds and 3 sections. A long table with chairs as a quiet reading and writing area occupies the 4th section. There is a room with a door to our right with a kitchen, eating tables, a radio, but no television. There are a chessboard, playing cards, and a foosball table, but a large sign on the wall says, "Quiet." This place was our home for 10 days in mid-August, and like everything else here, unreal. We are broken up into 3 guard duty groups of 6, Squad A, Squad B, and Squad C. Each group slept in their own areas for a reason, because one squad was on duty, another squad was going to bed. It was a grueling schedule of 3 hours marching in a guard tower and then 6 hours off duty. We had to learn to be sensitive to others as our sleep cycles all differed. Our off time was spent taking a nap and then eating, polishing our boots, cleaning our weapons, and getting ready for the next tour. We all knew each other as part of a bigger unit of 100 soldiers in a frontline infantry company. Here we were clustered into something different, in a building we could not leave except to march out for duty again. Each 6-man squad formed into 2 columns of 3 each, with a sergeant of the guard joining us. The routine was to proceed to the front gates of the prison silently and then halt. The doors opened with a loud squeak as we were ordered to forward march down the hall. Next, the group went out the open back door into the courtyard, and then a left turn called out in a low voice, "Column left." The trained soldier knows to count in his head 1, 2, and then follow the command, whatever it is. Timing is everything when marching, and in music. Plus, practice does make perfect. Path below our feet was beaten deeply into the ground, as unnamed feet had marched here before us. Each time we stopped one of the 6 guard towers, a soldier would leave us to replace the guard there, ending his stint. Now joining us, we proceeded to walk on the beaten path to each guard tower, quickly changing the guard. One joins our formation, and the other soldier hurries upstairs to his post. A quick glance down to the group acknowledges it is time to march again. When the group left the front gate, it was now all Team A guards, replaced by my B team being up in the towers. Like most people, they were tired and wanted to go eat, shower, and go to bed. Everyone felt the strain it had on us, but we had done harder than this before, so we were only mumbling under our breaths. I recall one morning just after 3 a.m., we 7 marched back from the prison and halted at the front door of our quarters. It was raining hard as we unloaded our rifles and cleared them, then quietly entering the building. The lights were all out as we entered the mess hall area, with the door behind us and the lights on brightly in here. A soldier always tends to his weapon daily, especially if it's been rained on. Clean it now or rust tomorrow. We all took off our wet boots and socks, threw our wet uniforms into a special hamper of dirty laundry. Each day, food, laundry, and the mail was delivered to us, the same food the guys back at the base were eating. This night had been hot, being mid-August, windy and constant rain blowing sideways at times. While up in our towers, we marched with our rifles resting on our shoulders like tin men. Around and around the 10-foot sides we marched through the night, occasionally stopping. A soldier stands at attention, erect, heels together, and feet slightly parted, with hands flat by our side. When you have a rifle, it rests on your right shoulder with the butt or bottom of it in the palm of your right hand. The right forearm is extended forward with your elbow tucked in against your side. This is called shouldered arms. If commanded to parade rest, the soldier only spreads the legs apart to allow a strong stance, repositions the rifle on the ground, butt against his toe. The hand holds the barrel with the right arm extended. The most important moves are done during the marching process, where the legs and the arms move together or separately. We are told to forward march, and immediately we step off, left leg first in unison. Often we were ordered to present arms, which is repositioning our weapons in front of our body, straight up and down, an arm salute. If we were marching a long distance, the command to right shoulder arms might be changed to left shoulder arms. This allows us to switch which side we carried the weapon on to get some blood flowing. Sometimes if we marched past a 4-star general, we would be ordered eyes right moments before we passed by. The soldier on the right side kept his eyes forward, ensuring we stayed in a straight line. When we were up in our watchtower, it was strictly forward march and parade rest for 3 hours non-stop. There was silence inside the walls and outside too in the middle of the night. The rain and my own sweat made me feel soaked and wondering what we were doing here. While we cleared our weapons, oiled them, and checked their action, it occurred to me to ask them, "Did anyone get wet?" Everyone sat up straight, gave me a dirty look and scowls while shaking their heads. No one dared to make noise at that hour, but it reminded us that we all got wet, felt very alone, and wanted for a bed back home. The next morning we were awoken by the smell of breakfast and our growling stomachs. The trick in the service is to get in line early to get the best food. It is hotter and plenty there, but if you wait too long, you get the last of it. I like the hot coffee best, being from New England, but my buddy from Florida wanted a Coca-Cola to wash down his bacon and scrambled eggs. The toast was always hours cold, old and stiff, never hot and oozing in real butter the way I yearned for it. Later in the day, when the chip beef in white sauce was delivered for dinner, that toast softened up a little, served as SOS. I learned to like it as a meal that would fill my belly until the next morning when eaten at 7 at night. Desserts were always plain white cake, pudding, and jello. The favorite of everyone was hot dogs and beans night with potato chips on the side. There was a day when one of the other guys from Team A was eating with us, and he mentioned that he had seen the old man walking around out back in the gardens. He commented that the guy looked like an old man wandering around looking lost. We all laughed, but had no knowledge of him other than he was prisoner number 7. The system of us rotating shifts every 6 hours from my team and then to different towers each time continued at all hours of the day or night. He was allowed out once a day for 1 hour, weather permitting, after lunch from 1 o'clock on to exercise. I had studied the back area there one evening while on duty, with old gardens now overgrown here and there, but neglected. This meant that 1 guard a day would be back there in the rear tower to see him, if at all. My chance had never happened to be in that hour, and finally one day we were about to go on duty for the noontime to 3 p.m. shift. I asked a fellow teammate member if I could swap posts with him so I could see the prisoner maybe. He said, "Sure, I would just as soon shoot him. Means nothing to me." That summed up the attitudes of all of us, because this whole experience was annoying to us. It was no fun at all. It was all business. Perfect pressed khaki uniforms, highly polished boots, marching for 9 hours a day. We were used to some freedoms from duty, but here it was stay inside or go march. That afternoon, I marched in my tower for an hour when I heard a door close and then saw a short man move quickly around the other beaten-in-the-ground path. He walked along the narrow path for one while glancing side to side, looking for unauthorized objects, and then disappeared from view. I continued to march as perfectly as I could because peering eyes were always watching us. Our leader had briefed us that our duty here should reflect how highly trained and disciplined we were. We were ordered to shoot intruders too close to the outer wall and not to speak to the man inside this place. There was a motion I caught out of the corner of my eye as I turned a corner on my right side. I came to parade rest as required in stopping. I then stood still and looked straight ahead, but my eyes looked down and around slowly. I was excited that I might see the prisoner today when suddenly he appeared. The path was beaten into the grass by him, walking around the small area back there in the shape of a horse racing track. Suddenly he appeared in my view. I studied his posture first, hunched over with his arms behind his back and hands together. The gait was that of a tall person with long legs, but moving slowly, as if counting the steps. The hair on his head was thinning, combed straight back, and he looked to me to need a shave, his frame thin. Maybe he felt me looking at him, or it was a habit to look up at the tower where a soldier walked every minute of every day. I saw him look up at me, then look down, when suddenly he stopped and gazed up at me. There was no expression on his face or mine, as my first thought was that he seemed shocked to see someone. We continued to look in each other's eyes for a long moment, like two strangers about to acknowledge each other, both of us human beings. It seemed like I was caught in a moment of importance being here and looking at him. But then my mind raced to the book at the front guard gate post. The book told of him long ago, a famous military man, a leader of those considered the most evil men in recent centuries. If I had not read that book and learned about his past of hate, mayhem, and death in his uniform, my thoughts would have been different. The moment came when I broke my attention from him, came to attention, and then shouldered my rifle and went back to marching my post. I was shaken inside knowing I had looked at him so closely. I felt guilty turning away from an old man being ignored down there, but also knew he deserved this punishment, this infamy for the rest of time. I continued my shift, and later that day I told my team members about that moment. They all agreed that it was better I saw him than any of them. The prisoner lived out his sentence alone for 25 years within those walls at Spandau Prison, till he used a rope to hang himself at 92 years old. He chose to be part of the most brutal army in our recent history. Without his uniform covered in eagles and swastikas, he was just an old man. The end.